I'm falling, feeling faster we go. Surrender to this moment like the dead of the night. I'm falling, faster we go.
What's up guys, it's me, Nathanael, FritzRolle732, and welcome to part 2 of my 5-part 20-second birthday special. And for this installment, you guys, we have a very special project that we are about to do a reaction to. And it is a furry documentary called The Fandom, which was done by a group of talented individuals led by the creative and talented Ash Coyote. And before we head down here, let me tell you guys my association with the furry fandom. Now, I first heard about furries as I was being a brony since 2017 or 2018, I'm pretty sure. And I checked out some artwork and some animations, whether it was safe work and not safe work. And I fell in love with the creativity that was going on. And then when the trailer was released, I started checking out some convention footage and started checking out the dance competitions. And oh my gosh, these people are just so talented. I just loved and lived for it. Like, not only just the actual competition, but the floor wars, like, those are awesome. Whether you're a fursuiter or not fursuiter, you guys know how to work. Oh my gosh, I loved it. However, maybe it would have been a little bit better if we just added a little more pop, lock, and death drop. I'm just saying. But either in that, all you guys out there, you guys are just so talented, seriously. And I just really like the fandom as a whole. And it wasn't until actually last year on this very day that you are watching this video, you guys, where I posted a tweet where I officially came out as a furry. Now, does this mean that I quit the brony fandom and moving on as a furry? Hell no, I'm not one of those people. It just means that I'm just a part of another fandom. And besides, who says you can't be a part of multiple fandoms? I mean, I became a part of the WWE universe before My Little Pony Friendship is Magic even aired, you guys. And then a few years I became a brony, and then a few years after that I'm a furry, and right now I'm all the fucking above. But anyways, going back to this documentary, I saw the trailer and as well as saw the miniseries based off of it, so we might get the chance to see a few of the clips that we saw in the miniseries here. I'm not sure, but we shall see, and I'm super excited. So with that, I say we should stop the rambling now and get on with the reaction. The Fandom in T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off. I better put on my glasses, by the way. Oh God.
There's this weird thing that humans do. We take animals and we put our words into their mouths to talk back to us, usually about us. It's a very strange thing, but we've done it for centuries.
Yeah, hieroglyphics. The Egyptian times.
We learn to read from anthropomorphic animals. We learn right from wrong from anthropomorphic animals. But most people don't notice it. Furry fans are the people who notice that we do this.
This is interesting.
And think that there's something really special about that.
Well, like the dictionary definition you get is like furry is a community of people that enjoy anthropomorphic art, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's way more than that. It's a social space that is largely queer and gravitates around using art as the vehicle to explore identity.
I sucked at drawing people, so I would draw animals and everything.
I sort of anthropomorphized my own dog in a lot of my drawings, stuff like that.
I was a part of a Lion King art archive online, and everybody role plays as lions, and I remember just thinking, guys, the lions are great, but what if we were wolves? And they're like, ew, furry. And I was like, furry?
Yeah, what?
I had my first word to get to this feeling that I had.
By the way, you made the right choice. Wolves are the best.
I was initially into cosplay. I'd cosplay a lot of anime characters.
I'm not alone. There are other people out there that are into this. I didn't come out fully because furry was taboo back then. It's something weird, something odd. It doesn't help that media never really had a positive point of view on it to begin with.
Even in its horrific
But
incidents,
I'm always grateful for
the media
friends
still
that I've
made fun
and
of
the
us.
people that I've
Like,
met
it was
along the
messed
way.
up.
It's just a fundamental part of who I am.
So I'm not super familiar with the history of the fandom. I think it originated out of a sci-fi convention in the 80s, and I want to say probably California.
Hey, I saw that. That's a My Little Pony print that was signed by Top of the State Made. I saw that.
I was already known as the science fiction geek of the family, the movie geek, and the Disney geek. I've been all of these things since I was a kid.
I've been interested in science fiction fandom since the 1970s when I went to my first Star Trek convention. I was a Navy brat. Our family would go to the movie theater at the Air Navy base in St. Louis and watch films.
One of the first times I've ever been to a theater, my dad hated them. He much preferred drive-ins. Somehow we talked him into going to a sit-down theater to see Robin Hood.
Ah, Robin Hood.
And I would fuss and cry and squirm, always. Except...
I mean, I did too, but I had high sensories. Really? You didn't cry for Bambi? What?
I was immediately hooked. I was into that cartoon.
I just loved animation, what it looked like, and also how it was done.
Yes. Mad respect.
I'm into it in a way that my school friends aren't. I'm into it in a way that my parents aren't. So what do? I was looking for fandom. A bunch of people getting together and geeking out with each other about media.
We traveled across the country and ended up moving to California in 1958.
I live in Southern California, close to Hollywood, the media capital of the world, or at least it was at the time.
Background places, please.
I mean, it sort of is right now.
Turn around, let's see your back.
A little.
Okay, you had an expose it. Why don't we try it?
LostCon 1980, the local Southern California science fiction convention. That was the first convention that I had ever been to that had an art show, and it was beautiful. A lot of it was princesses in flowing gowns, star fields that you'd see on the side of someone's van, and a lot of it was just absolutely amazing. Wow. But then here are these pictures of these semi-anthropomorphic weasel characters with antennas like bugs. A friend of mine in school said, Rodney, you gotta see these, because they knew I wouldn't shut up about my enjoyment of muscular characters. In school, I was considered very weird for that. So I
what
asked
is
them
normal
at the art
anyway?
show, who does this art?
I had a video room at LostCon 7 showing some anime, some science fiction TV shows.
Astro Boy.
And this tall guy comes up and goes,
why do your pine martens have antennas?
Oh my, this person recognizes the kind of animals I'm drawing. Most people thought they were cats. And I said, well, sit down and I'll explain it to you.
The 70s, yeah.
We loved Japanese animation, and nobody knew about it except for the few shows we were getting seen with subtitles.
This is the city, Inglewood, California. This is where the Los Angeles chapter of the Cartoon Fantasy Organization meets. This chapter is the first chapter in the club and has been meeting here for 5 years.
In 1977, myself and 4 other people, some of whom were animators in the business, actually TV animators, we decided more people should see this stuff and started a club. And it was the first anime club.
The very first anime fan club in America.
Wow. So it wasn't just furry, it was anime.
A lot of the people that came to the meetings were also into animal characters. Which is why the mascot of the club became one of my Skiltair, which are sort of an alien mammal based on weasels.
Ah, it was a weasel. I was like wondering, is it a mink or a ferret? But yeah, I do see the weasel now.
Rodney would come to the screenings and we'd hang out and talk, and we saw each other more and more and more after that. Here were 2 people who came from very different backgrounds, but we were paralleling each other amazingly on interests and passions. Movies, animation, novels, comics. And a few years later, we decided to become a couple.
Rod and Mark are effectively the grandparents of the furry fandom. I consider them the parents of the furry fandom, but I've also been in the furry fandom for 20 years at this point.
Nice.
The Prancin Skiltair household is like a museum and library of furry things. They had figurines all over the place. They had bookcases and bookshelves of furry comics, of anime comics, of sci-fi.
Wow.
So this is San Diego Comic-Con one year. This is Don Bluth and Douglas Adams. Me.
Wow.
Remember they had the...
I gotta give them mad props. This is amazing.
There was lots and lots and lots of science fiction conventions.
Wow.
We saw the birth of the comic book shop.
In the 70s,
Man,
it was
this
a
isn't
time
only
when
just
the
talking
comics
about furries,
code
this is talking
was
about
still heavily
fandoms in
enforced,
general a
and
little
so
bit.
comic
I
books
love
all had
it.
to be black and white, good and evil, superhero comics, basically.
Yep.
But there were these groups of artists who were just chomping at the bit to do something different, to do something not superheroes, to do something funny animal.
Funny animal does not mean animals that are funny.
Yeah.
It means animals that are in the funnies.
Ah.
A lot of people think funny
Yeah, the
animal and think
comics.
that it all has to go to kids, but a lot of it was being consumed by adults as well.
Yeah.
Especially in the underground comic
General
scene.
audiences, people. General
Their
audiences.
sense of mischief, their sense of uninhibitedness. I was sort of in a family where I don't think there was a lot of elbow room for my exuberance, my imagination, and I think I projected a lot of that into these stories, into these characters, and I think a good deal of identification developed from that.
Funny animal comics used to be very popular before superheroes took off.
It's true.
And they had their own fandom.
Garfield?
It was very spread and had a lot of difficulty talking to each other in the old pre-internet days.
Now they've been lost to obscurity.
The fandom started pretty much. The old folk tend to disagree on where exactly it began, but the commonly accepted starting point was a painting done by the artist Steve Galachi. He had created a character, a furry character, a pilot in a futuristic spaceship. This piece was hanging up in an art show at an East Coast science fiction convention. Now, what you have to understand is that hadn't been done before. a furry, an anthropomorphic character, was limited to a coyote hitting the bottom of a cliff, standing up, dusting himself off, and going to the Acme catalog.
He also published one of the very first furry anthology comics, Albedo.
Steve had a whole world about these anthropomorphic animals in outer space and their politics and war between different groups. It really caught people's imaginations.
It was from discussion of his work that led to the very first furry party. Directly led to the very first furry party, actually, because they moved the discussion from in front of his art panel to a private room to continue the discussion.
Of course, gotta get that Coca-Cola.
It started out as gatherings of people
Pepsi, who
in
knows?
room parties at science fiction conventions.
His fans
It's a
would
Pepsi.
show up
Yep.
and he'd
It's
discuss
soda.
this
They're all
universe he
soda.
created.
And that was the beginning. That was around 1980 or thereabout.
These room parties somehow got the name of furry parties.
The term furry had got around and stuck enough that when we had another party at WesterCon 1986 in San Diego, we decided to call it a furry party. All of these artists were amazed that there were other people out there drawing quote-unquote funny animals in the way that they did.
I love this.
Someone would walk into our party, pull out a sketchbook and say, I was the only one I thought that was drawing this kind of stuff.
Wow.
And that just kept happening again and again.
They had this same revelation as I did. I'm not the only one. I always
thought
thought
this
I
was
was
the
weird.
This Is
I
Me
always
from
thought
Greatest
no one else
Showman.
would
I was like,
understand.
what?
And here are people who are just like me.
It was like a quest to find more people who liked the same thing we liked. And it became the most important thing in our lives.
I wanted to jump up on the Empire State Building and sing an aria about it. I thought we had stumbled across something just so cool.
Wow.
Well, this is a classic Merlino. This is the Avant Garden Gallery in downtown Santa Ana. It's part of their arts district. Mark and I have been hosting what we call the Art of Furry Fandom, where we gather furry artists together and have them put their stuff on display along with all of this quote-unquote regular art.
Like I said, I love the art, y'all. I freaking love the art. Denver, Colorado.
Here was our art show and our sponsor lounge. A couple panel rooms here and a mini fursuit lounge.
Is this Anthrocon?
And like here was our game room. Hi, I'm Bubbles. I'm 25.
Denver.
I'm the convention chair for 5 different furry conventions, including Denver, here in Denver, Colorado. The hotel will give us this whole space, and we choose how we use it. A little meet and greet area, some board gaming, and then our big main events room.
Yep. Or like dance competitions and, you know, a few other panels. Wow. I am just losing my mind a little bit. Oh my god. I haven't freaked out completely yet, but I'm up there. I'm up there.
We have had hotels that are like, so I looked up this stuff and what the heck is this? I mean, Denver is like a celebration of the anthropomorphic arts. Well, I found furry probably junior high-ish. I didn't know what furry was yet. That was back in the days of Neopets on the internet.
Wait, was that a Rainbow
I found
Dash
all those,
spread?
message boards
I saw a
and
Rainbow
like,
Dash
these
spread.
are my people. I guess I'm here now.
That's what I said about the bronies.
My parents, they always thought it was like some weird kinky thing that like, what is my daughter doing? The fandom growing
I
up
don't
was
think
kind
so.
of a hobby, especially working as a medic. It was a side thing that I could do and enjoy outside of work. now, I run conventions. I mean, my life is the fandom, and I don't know where I would be now without it.
It's 6:30. 88. Comic-Con, yes! Oh my god. Wow. Comic-Con has really changed over the years. Holy crap! I love this.
We had the creators, the people that made the art. They were fans of comic strips, they were fans of comic books, and they were all aiming to be in that business.
I wonder if they're going to be talking about musicians. Who knows?
Reed Waller started an apazine called Voody. It had funny animals in it, but it was more of an underground influence.
APA, APA, Amateur Press Association.
All the members of this apazine would make photocopies of their artwork and send it into the editor, who would compile the entire book together and then send a copy out to all the members.
And then you would get back, here's my work and 25 or 30 other works.
This is how a lot of people over a large geographical area got a chance to get feedback from other artists, authors, and creators.
There was literally this giant culture of people who were talking to each other by writing into the letters columns of their favorite magazines. It was like the internet in slow motion.
Wow.
We were a very strange fandom. We didn't fully grasp how strange we were going in. But we were not a fandom of a property. Nor were we a fandom of a genre. Other fandoms would look at us and get extremely confused. What are you about?
Yeah,
Who
I would be
are
confused
you
too.
about?
I still get that question.
All of those specificities don't matter. It's the overarching animals doing things that animals don't do thing that binds this all together. Beyond that, it can be anything.
It's not just
probably the earliest furry work I would talk about is Omaha the Cat Dancer, which exists because Tarl Wayne, who is fairly influential in the early furry fandom, wrote a letter to Voody.
Sent in a postcard saying something about how there wasn't enough sex in funny animal comics. And I've never really been sensible about resisting dares.
Oh my god.
In response, Kate Worley and Reed Waller came up with Omaha the Cat Dancer, which is about a exotic pole dancing feline and her boyfriend and sometimes girlfriend. It gets a complicated storyline sometimes. It was a story with drama, it was a story with realistic action, with character motivations.
Okay, that's safe.
Omaha
that
was
safe.
widely acclaimed as a great pro-feminist comic as well, because it showed a female main character in control of her own destiny, and she didn't let society decide what she wanted.
Yes, Queen, yes.
There was a local crackdown in the St. Paul, Minnesota community about the ethicality of serving liquor in places where ladies took their clothes off. And I incorporated this into a satirical strip, and I started making fun of local politics and so forth. But once it got rolling, the satire just kind of dropped out. It was because the characters just kind of took over the story.
We had all quietly discovered that part of what brought us to furry characters, anthropomorphic characters, was that we thought they could be sexy. It seemed kind of obvious when you saw some of these characters and how they were designed that they were intended to be sexy.
Yeah.
We felt we were just kind of jumping on a big existing bandwagon.
One more. Hold it.
The very first conventions I ever went to, there were erotic material of every fandom. So, of course, furry is full of sexuality because furry is full of human beings who are alive and thinking and feeling.
Ken Sample quite often would draw this little cougar guy that looked an awful lot like Ken. We started calling that character Ken Cougar. We thought, hey, we should have our own character too that's actually us.
And that's when the Fursona
This was a
born.
big shift in the fandom. We went from fans of animal people to being animal people.
Wow. Moosing around.
This created an
Moosing.
explosion
I'm moosing
in art
around.
demand.
This just takes art and creativity to a whole nother level, people. I love it.
A fursona is someone's character that represents them. That may be
I love
how they
music.
see
I love the
themselves.
night.
It may be
Wanna
an
be a wolf
aspirational
who
character,
howls
what
and
they wish
sings
they
through the
were
night.
or would like to become. As an artist, it involves kind of getting inside their head and figuring out what is it that their fursona is saying. Who is this person and what part of this human is this furry character, this fursona that you're designing? When you can figure that out and you show them the final piece of art and they're like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. That's just like the greatest thing in the world.
Because a lot of people, their furry character is
I give
the
special
better
thanks to
version
Atomic
of them.
Geek for creating my first
This
ever
would be
Fursona.
me if I didn't have these problems or these things. This is the best of me. Because everyone likes to think of animals as being more pure and more innocent and stuff like that. Because humans can do some pretty dark things.
But also that goes the same thing
Granted,
for my pony.
so do
as
animals in the
well.
real world. But we're not getting into that. This is fantasy. At least that's how I always interpreted it. That, and I think some people just thought certain animals are cute.
Everybody wanted pictures of their fursonas.
We started getting together discussion groups. What is your fursona?
My earliest character was a kangaroo named White Death because I was 13 and I was super edgy.
I chose a husky. They were always my favorite dog, and the personality-wise of a husky is basically me.
I really like border collies because they're super smart, and then I was like, but I need to be ferocious like a wolf. It is a border collie wolf character. His name was Kygel, and I had stolen the name from an exchange student that was at my school.
I think people
The
join
reason
furry
why I decided to go with a wolf
how
was just
encouraging
because
it
I
is
wanted to show
of
like that
exploring yourself,
strong,
understanding
brave
yourself,
type of
and
character.
expressing.
But at the same time, like has a sensitivity side or sensitive side. Wow.
I've been drawing for as long as I can remember. I just picked it up as a kid and didn't really stop. I'd say I identify a lot with birds. I'm pretty quiet and a little bit shy or flighty. I deal with social anxiety and things like that. I feel like I have 1 foot in the furry fandom and 1 foot in fantasy illustration. There's a humanness that you can impart to animals or dragons or anything like that, where there's that ability to relate to what you're seeing, even though what you're seeing is fantastical. And I think that's really powerful.
That's a word.
I started doing conventions to go and sell my work and show it.
Oh my god.
I love it a lot more than just doing like a mainstream comic convention where it's all people celebrating other intellectual properties that are technically corporate. One of the things I really love about the fandom is how many people find it to be their path out of their shell.
Yeah. Again, that's pretty much me with the Brony fandom, but this also is as well.
I started looking at all the different suits and stuff like on Google search, and they just look so unique and just fascinated me.
Me too.
And I was like, I can do that. I really want to do that. And this is another creative outlet that I can use. And I wanted to make my own character come to life and be one of those fursuits.
Wow.
I remember wearing my Luna suit for the first time. I ran into so many people that
Not
wanted
that
to take
Luna.
pictures
Not
with
that
me,
Luna.
and it was just really exciting to like go around and have fun in fursuit with other people in fursuit.
You can look at their character and learn things about them in that very moment.
Wow.
Like what their species choice is, what sort of colors they're using, what their name is. That's all broadcasting a lot of things that they want you to know about them, and they might not even realize what they're sending out subconsciously.
Usually when I go to make a suit, everything from gender to height plays a role in creating these characters for people, and it's actually really fun to help them explore this whole new character that they're creating.
I think you're in Vegas.
This is our spokesmaster.
We had been going to Baycon, and the anime fans were taking over the convention. The people running the convention kind of politely said, could you guys maybe get your own convention because this is science fiction and it's becoming all anime? Rodney and I said, gee, maybe we could have a furry convention just for furries. So we started looking around for a hotel.
Oh, so they took that as a compliment. That's good.
We weren't coming in there with a
as a sign
corporate
of
credit card
disrespect.
and laying it down and say this pays for everything. If I signed the contract with the hotel, I was liable to pay the hotel.
I will admit I was young and had kind of stars in my eyes. I think we had a crew of like 5, counting Mark and myself, for running everything.
We'd been tossing names around, and I had the idea, how about conference except put a U instead of an E? Conference. That's the name we picked. We numbered the first convention 0.
Because we weren't certain
Because
it was
it's
going
a
to work.
prototype, yep.
So we said to ourselves, let's get crazy. If we're going to put on our own conventions, let's try and do some things differently. One of the big things that you will always find in the history of science fiction conventions is the Saturday night masquerade.
Wow.
It was the big event. They weren't professionally lit in any way, shape, or form. All of us myopic fans with their glasses could see these glowing blobs sauntering down the stage.
Yeah, I guess that looks pretty.
We thought it'd be great if people could actually see the costumes. Maybe even close up.
Is this a little better? Is this a little better? Yeah. All right. Okay. Down on the masters a bit. You're fine. Okay. We'll begin with these first 10 costumes.
Wait a second. That guy looks familiar.
Back then, the art show was the biggest thing. The art shows were always popular and always made a lot of money for the artists.
We wanted to make furry conventions smart and fun. If you wanted to come to learn stuff, you could learn stuff. If you wanted to come to hang and be friends, you could hang and be friends.
January of 91. A friend of mine and I drove 44 hours straight from Tampa to SoCal to Conference 2 in Anaheim. It was a completely new experience. The first trip out of the time zone. seeing hills for the first time, then mountains for the first time, and then snow. Just a completely new thing, throwing me completely out of my element. This sheltered, shy college kid, and next thing you know, I'm in California amongst several hundred furries. These comic artists that I'd seen in fanzines and black and white comics, they're right there in front of me, and they're just people. I was learning art myself and drawing from time to time. Next thing you know, I'm writing for the first 6 issues of a magazine called Yarf.
Yeah. There's been some footage floating around that's just adorable. The terrible 80s hair, the 80s fashion, and it was very clear that these people were having fun.
I was like, was that Dusty Cat?
Places out there that will sell you, will charge you a fortune for something.
They found a place to start exploring who they were at a time and place that they never had been able to before. It was very inclusive and very welcoming and became sex positive. Not that it was about sex, but that when sex happened, it was generally viewed favorably. It wasn't dirty, it wasn't wrong. It was just sex, and people have sex, and that's fine.
It's the Rod O'Reilly Master Mix at
We were fully prepared for it to fall flat on its face and cost us a bunch of money and to say, well, that was a great idea, let's try something else. But it worked.
Wow!
It gave me a feeling of accomplishment.
We were onto something, and we said, let's take this football and run with it. And we did.
The con chair is always the one in the spotlight. Or people think we're the only one making the decision. This whole team of 60 to 100 people put in months and months of work to put on this show. We can't run it with
just
5
like this
people.
documentary, it's a whole group
no way.
effort.
Yeah, that's
Spoiler to Truffle? The thing that I didn't know was how many small moving parts there are. What time things open, what time things close, when things finally get locked down, and how many people it takes to put on something like this.
Wow.
Usually a setup starts right after the last one ended.
I think that was Forest Rain.
We start listening to feedback, we start improving things. It's a very, very complex machine.
This is A1 Corky to A1, whatever your species is.
Screen machine.
There's a ton of different departments. We have a business director, events director, an operations director, marketing and public relations, theming, our HR managers, IT and AV work, so all the sound and lighting that you see.
Things like Dealer's Den, which is a vendor space, requires hand choosing the dealers. And we go through 400 applications every single year.
And they take probably...
There's only 2 female convention chairs in the entire fandom.
Oh my god!
And we have one. And we're proud of that.
I graduated as an EMT and from high school at the same time and worked my butt off to get to paramedic school as soon as I could. The president of that program sat me down in an office and said, look, you're going to be the only woman in this class. I think you should leave. Just being able to overcome that in that profession, also coming to Furry, has made a big difference because in the convention leadership world, there's not a lot of women. It is still extremely male-dominated. A lot of people in the 911 first responder profession hurt their back. That's unfortunately what happened to me. I wasn't allowed to do that job anymore. I do miss medicine, but I get a lot of the same gratification out of this.
Okay, yeah, so there's the console stuff and then the GUH.
The computer, the network, the mass communication revolution is what made furry fandom take off.
Thank you, Internet!
A whole lot of people who are furries are in IT.
But it was the realm of the military and colleges. That were the only people who knew about it. Well, eventually, the college people went home and took a lot of the computer stuff with them.
And then along came ARPANET, FidoNet, bulletin boards, the proto-internet. A bulletin board service. You had to dial in to this central network and you could post text, pictures. The pictures was the painful part because it would take about 30 minutes to download. And you would see the cursor rendering across the screen every line of pixels.
It was only a week until you got a reply to your post instead of a month. Hey, life improves.
People today take it for granted. Back then, this was new. This was unheard of. This was Star Trek stuff. It gave people a chance to do role play as their characters.
The 90s, here we go.
When I was just coming out of college and I was starting to work, the internet was a very small place. We think of it as this big thing of global data, but really there wasn't as much out there as people think there was. And there weren't the browsers, so we were using things like Gopher and Mosaic and all kinds of weird technology that doesn't exist anymore.
A bunch of people would get together on a computer system, form characters, and go on an adventure together.
They started calling these things multi-user dungeons, MUDs.
It would say, you are now in a room that is this big, it's colored red, it's made of brick,
It is red.
and there is
It
a
is red.
dragon
He
sitting
is
there
so
that's going to eat
sus.
your face.
Other gatherings started that were entirely social. They didn't want to continue using the word mud because that still had that dungeon connotation. So they started calling him mucks.
With the online communities, particularly Furry Muck that started in 1990, people were getting to know each other, and they would go to conventions to meet each other.
Excuse me, are you the Carno?
Yes.
Hi, I'm the Joe Strike.
Hey, hiya, Joe.
Oh yeah, shake right there, we go.
I'm Meaty on Furry Muck. This is Tarek, who also is on Furry Muck.
Whoa, Furry Muck for furries with long tails.
And it became more about meeting each other and having this sense of community beyond just people centered around creators.
That's how I first found that there was an organized furry fandom. The community was my solace, my salvation. I was not very happy in where I was, the south side of Chicago at the time. I spent a very, very long year there.
Here we go, we got furries.
And somebody mentioned that there was a convention coming up in Southern California called Conference. Maybe you should go. I said, I'm a postdoc at this point. I don't have any money. I called my dear and sainted mother. Kids, never lie to your mom. I told my mom the truth. I'd like to go to a conference in California, but the professor won't pay for it. That's a true statement. So she sent me the money to go to the conference. And that was my first furry convention. Now, I had been going to science fiction conventions for 10 years. I'd been volunteering at them. I was a convention goer. But this was the first time that it was a convention that was entirely of interest to me.
Again, same with BronyCon.
And started going to furry conventions every year after that.
Uncle Kage / Sam Conway.
He's very charismatic.
He's very funny.
He had this sort of mad scientist kind of persona.
So you're gonna create real furries.
I am, as a matter of fact.
And how are you gonna do that?
Well, it's quite simple. You see, you take the.
I was sitting in the lobby, and I was telling somebody a story. It's in my nature.
As Mary Mary Shelley said, if you make the creature of gigantic stature, you have a much easier time in dealing with the parts.
And they simply said, would you come back next year and do that as an event? What? Complain about my job? They said, yeah. I said, oh, I can do that, sure. So I stood up in the lobby and complained about my job for an hour. Well, he was kind of doing stand-up that was slice of life. People loved his stories.
He was already getting a reputation for his performances, and we were just thrilled to have him at our show.
And that was 25 or so years ago. And people still fly me all over the world to get up on stage and talk. That's all I do. I don't understand it. I just do it, and they keep inviting me back, so I must be doing something right. After Furry Muck, almost all the furries were college students. This tripled our attendance. Since we had all of the role players coming in, all the college students coming into the fandom, the gender of the content began to shift. You had a lot more males. You had a lot more lesbian couples and gay couples.
Yes.
People don't realize it, but back in the 60s and 70s, there wasn't that much of a gay community.
Where could you go for companionship? Someplace where you had an equal chance of getting your teeth kicked in or getting arrested.
Right about the time that furry fandom was hitting was right about the time that the AIDS crisis hit. I know people who lost dozens of friends. An awful lot of people had to come out of the closet and get active for their own survival. There was, in fact, an LGBT contingent in the furries. We're going to celebrate both of those at once.
I still remember how I felt when I joined the fandom. Like when I was like a teenager and I had no idea if I was queer or not, and I was really scared to talk about it and I couldn't tell my friends.
High school was rough. High school was rough. I was pretty socially isolated. I was nerdy. I was bullied.
The community around me at the time was not queer friendly or even art friendly.
80% of the furry fandom identifies as LGBTQI+. Wow. According to First Science 2018 Anthrocon study.
Doing art's really vulnerable. Like, if you put something on the page, then you probably did that for a reason. About midway through college, I started questioning my gender and eventually transitioned. And that was a very powerful time in my life where I got to really resort my identity as this purpose-driven person.
When I started to transition, I actually explored the identity first with my character to see, I guess, if it felt right to become more masculine. It was no longer Luna, it was now the masculine Nate. And it's really helped me like explore what parts of myself I wanted to be as more trans-masculine versus, you know, the meek female I used to be. Safe place to explore the transition without transitioning myself first.
Man, good for you. Up to 12.2% of furries may identify as transgender. The national average is only 0.6. Wow. Wow.
Trans experiences are just human experiences. Ultimately, furry is also about human experiences.
Once I discovered the fandom, I could chat with people online. I could express my creativity. I could make friends.
I can actually talk about being queer without like being worried that people make fun of me.
What better place is there to put yourself out there and say, hey, this is how I'd like to be seen or treated, and people will meet you on your own terms in a way that you just don't get anywhere else.
And this is the same for the Brony fandom.
Oh, because yours are closer to 8, so it could be just right close enough. No, they
The first three conferences, everyone who
think that
showed
was
up
Dusty Cat
was
again.
someone that I knew
I'm not
personally
sure.
by name. we realized that the con had gotten so large that we didn't know everyone by name.
Pull that down, pull the mask down against your cheeks.
Oh my God, this is gonna be interesting to watch someday.
And if you asked who we were and could you point at us, they wouldn't know. And that was perfectly fine. So it was always about this thing. It was not about us. We never wanted to be celebrities.
There were very, very few fursuiters. There was only, I think, maybe one or two at the earliest furry conventions.
The suiting was almost non-existent. People would just paint their bodies, and that was it.
One of them is Hilda the Bambioid, created and performed by Robert Hill.
So we have a Bambioid invading.
Hello, Bambioid.
You can pretty much say that it was the original fursuit.
Wow.
Oopsie, hello. How you doing?
I was part of the burgeoning fursuiting community. You can make your own mascot. That's mind blowing.
I have to do that.
Favorite costume is
Their convention conference grew to be the largest convention in its day, over 1,000 people, which was huge for the time. But then there was negative publicity about it, and I'm not sure how much detail you want to get into about that.
We did have some incidents at conventions where there were people getting completely drunk, coming out into the convention and causing trouble. Or in some cases, getting stoned out of their mind and having to be taken off the property.
In the very early days, a furry convention was an unintentional pun, a rather wild and untamed affair. There was not a lot of attention paid to public decorum. And people were out there to have fun.
Good thing they censored. Yeah,
letting
they have
themselves go.
censors.
Let's just be crazy. That's fun and that's fine.
That was
if
Dusty.
you keep in
That
mind
was
that you're
Dusty
still
Cat.
in a public venue. Folks tended to forget that.
Oh my god. That's actually pretty funny. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Starts at $20.
That was actually funny, I'm not gonna lie. But it did
Well,
cause
let's
trouble.
see now. Should I talk about the semen in the elevator?
Oh.
No, I don't know if there's any truth to that. I think there were people who wanted to give the furs a bad reputation, and I think a lot of this misinformation was spread. But there might have been people who felt a little too liberated.
This caused us to have to do something we didn't think was necessary. We had to put rules of conduct in our program book. And we were criticized, why didn't you have rules of conduct from the very beginning? Because we didn't think people were that stupid.
Okay, here we go.
And when we had 200, 300, 400 people, we didn't have problems. Their twist on it was, yeah, Mark and Rodney allow that kind of stuff at conventions.
I remember when I was working at Disney Television in the mid-90s, the executives at Disney and at the other studios knew about furries, but they did not particularly like the furries.
Some furry artists have been turned away because the people that are interviewing them have heard about these furry conventions.
And interestingly, it wasn't just because of the adult material, it was also because they saw people trading art back and forth freely. And they did not like the idea of property being freely exchanged like that.
Unless if it's for friends and family, that's all right.
Professional hazard to let anyone know that you were involved with the furry fandom. I had snuck away to go to conference for the weekend, and two of my coworkers had apparently shadowed the con and seen me there. As soon as I came into work, they popped in my cubicle and started going, "Furry, furry," and I was like, oh my god. I mean, they'd been there themselves, so what could they say?
You guys are here for a convention of your own. Yeah. Computers?
Marketing.
Whoa, even better.
There was a large fandom out here in California, and there was also one back east, kind of around New York.
There had been an attempt to start up an East Coast furry convention, because in the United States,
East
there
Coast,
was
baby.
a conference in Southern California, and that was it. So in 1997, they started Albany Anthrocon.
Man. That's the ironic thing about Bronies is that we started in the East Coast, and then it transferred to West Coast, and then around the world.
Across the country. It was obviously a first-year con, kind of cute. As I said, I had been volunteering at science fiction conventions for years. And I was approached by one of their committee members who said, would you be our guest of honor next year?
Ah!
As the convention was coming up, they had an email list for staff members. A long-standing problem that I have is I have a tendency to stick my nose in, whether it's wanted or not.
Eavesdropping.
Things were coming across the mailing list, and I'm like, And I would hesitantly type back, are you guys really sure you want to do that? You see, PhilCon tried this in 1984, and here this list of terrible things happened, and they swore high and low they'd never do that again. If you do this, that would get around those problems. Then they started asking my advice. Well, how would you run this? What would you do here? How should we do the following? They're honest questions, so I answered honestly. As the convention date was approaching, there was a concern over the finances. The chairman of the convention realized that we are probably going to completely lose our shirts. We're going to have to shut this down. Some of the staff members came to me and said, would you take over? And I said, this is all kind of happening awful fast, folks.
Yeah.
First off, I'm your guest of honor. It looks kind of bad if I'm also your chairman.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm willing to do
guest
it
of honor
because
to
I want to help out. It's a good little convention. You guys are really gung-ho. I'm happy to do it. But it's gonna have to be done differently. You can't run it like a bunch of college kids having a party anymore.
It's true.
If you
Not
want
like a
this
fraternity,
to
not like a
succeed and
sorority,
have another year,
it's
you're
gotta
gonna
be
have to
professional.
run it as a business.
Tell us all about Albany Anthrocon.
Albany Anthrocon no longer exists.
It's now become?
It's simply become Anthrocon. The furry revolution. We moved to the place that it all began. The Hilton Valley Forge.
You had me.
That's where the Declaration of Independence was signed. But you'll be all
Actually,
aboard.
in the Hilton?
In the Hilton.
Signed in the Hilton.
Signed in the Hilton.
Turn that off already, so these people don't know us.
Oh,
Jim,
party people.
Finally, in 1999, I attended my very first furry convention, which was Anthrocon.
Yep, Anthrocon.
It was one of the first major things I'd ever traveled to by myself. There were probably all of 30 events
That's
for the
like
entire
prehistoric
weekend.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
But
Holy
for
crap.
me, that was a lot to do. And this guy just came down. He said, "You look troubled, my friend. What's wrong?" And I was like, "Well, I just don't know what to make of all this." He put his arm around me and he said, "I want you to take a look around the lobby. This is a moment you will remember for the rest of your life." And that was
And
the
I think
moment that I
Anthrocon
really
is now
realized
in
I found a
Pittsburgh,
group of
Pennsylvania,
people
right?
that I not only
Yeah, we're from
related
New York
to,
to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
but they
I
made me
think.
feel good about myself. My personality had a place in the world.
Oh.
And the person that told me that was Uncle Kagi.
You got us a great hotel. It's perfect. We can be there forever because it's got more space than we could ever possibly use. First year, bam, full. The next year we filled it and 2 hotels down the road. We're gonna need bigger space. I looked around in Philadelphia, got the problem solved. The Adams Mark has got more space than we could ever possibly need. Bam, full that very first year.
1,457.
That was 1,457, in case you didn't hear that.
Wow.
How many of us are there? When I was negotiating with Pittsburgh, I said, okay, guys, it's perfect. We got more space there. And they said, shit, just stop.
I called it.
Don't say it. I'm still not allowed to say that phrase in regards to this city. We just got more space than we ever possibly need.
Every convention has a hook. The hook for Anthrocon is Pittsburgh itself. It's the city. The downtown area is vibrant and alive, and people are coming down to watch the fursuit parade.
Oh my god!
We were recently told that Anthrocon is the third most valuable convention to the city of Pittsburgh itself.
Anthrocon unleashes $7.9 million in spending for alligator. Wow, and that's from the Pittsburgh Business Times in 2018. Holy crap!
We have become
How much does
a Pittsburgh
BronyCon
institution.
generate?
We're not just an
I think
event
it's
that
around
happens.
5
We are
million,
now
2.5
part
to
of the
5
city's
million, I
art
think. I'm
scene.
not sure.
I don't think any other convention anywhere has that sort of distinction.
Holy crap!
I hate going on stage.
Aw.
I get stage fright hardcore.
I used to have that
And
feeling.
people are like, you're the con chair. You have to be extroverted. You have to be willing to talk
No,
to
you
anybody
don't.
and talk about anything.
No,
I'm
you
not.
don't listen to them.
The suit definitely helps with that.
Aw.
I love being in a costume and being able to act like something else. Because in high school, I was the school mascot.
You do you, girl.
I'm more open and comfortable with myself.
Since I was like 3 years old, I was trying to take a feather duster and put it in my shorts, and then I have a tail. If you found a mask with feathers on it, possibilities were endless. So I was just trying to
Seriously,
make the perfect
the
costume.
artistry in these
We found
cosplays is
furries
just
where
absolutely
we're all
amazing.
trying to
I
get the
love
perfect
it.
costume. I had just gotten out of high school and I was starting to go to college, and I'm making a fursuit for some reason. I called a friend up and I was like, take me to PetSmart. I need to buy a collar in my costume.
Oh my
As we're driving back home, there's this car wash, and we just see this guy hopping around, struggling to get people to come to the car wash. And I was like, he needs my help. I jumped in. I was doing jumping jacks and just helping to get a bunch of people to pull over. And it was a success. People were like, where did you get that? And then when they'd find out I made it, they were like, can you make me one? And I was like, I don't know.
And then 2000s, here we go, baby, here we go. Ooh.
I was
Oh, that's
obsessed with The Lion King, obsessed with pretty much any animal movie. So I built my first suit at 17 and I wore it for Halloween at my high school.
Oh my god.
I went to college, got my degree in something completely unrelated, and was just doing it on the side. And then it just kind of accidentally became a business, and now I'm doing this full time.
I would see these suits being built and I'm like, I want to do that. I want to get involved. And I didn't really feel very much technology was really being used in building these things. It was a challenge for me. I wanted to figure out how to do it my way.
Holy cow. Oh my god. You have to cast it.
My whole life I struggled with anxiety and depression, and a few years ago I was diagnosed with bipolar as well. It's really hard and it just tears you down, and I would come home from work every day crying. Nowadays, I feel like I've done something good. I'm creating something for someone to enjoy. I'm much more stable mentally, and it feels really good.
I'd worked really hard to have a nice house, a nice car, typical American dream. But I found it was really empty. And I found that it was not fulfilling at the end of the day. And I've been having more fun in doing this than I think I've ever had with anything in my entire life.
I teamed up with Scuff because Scuff was starting to build pieces and parts on his own.
Wow.
Not only do you want a fursuit to look good, it needs to feel good. Every fursuit we build is custom. That's your fursuit. It should feel like your fursuit when you put it on.
I think we've made over 600 fursuits. I've kind of lost track.
Oh my god. I love this. I absolutely love this.
It's not just about the animal characters, it's about the people, and it's about the, you know, the atmosphere of it. And you've got writers, artists, animators, performers, musicians that all collide into this one massive group. And that's what makes it interesting. There's always something new. My daughter was in the fursuit parade. People complimented her on her suit, thought she was adorable. You want your child to have as many of those moments as they can.
It's true.
And
there are some
world,
actually,
you know, you can't.
There are some young furries
You can't
out there
guarantee
as well.
that for them.
Whoa. We don't know nearly enough about furries. We're trying to learn.
Excellent.
Got in touch with Mark Merlino.
Mm-hmm. He's the man. He'd be the man, yeah.
The earliest media coverage that I can remember was in 1993. The crew from Sci-Fi Channel called Sci-Fi Buzz wound up going to one of the early conferences, and they did a very positive piece.
Now, we weren't as careful as people are these days, so if people got it wrong, I quite often would just let it slide. I sometimes regret that.
This was 2001.
Vanity
If you look
Fair.
through it, you'll see a lot of photos
I think
of furries enjoying themselves in fur meets, and people are talking about their own take on furry, interspersed with other articles talking about poly groups and orgies and stuff like that. That's not what furry fandom was all about.
No.
I was approached in '99 by a guy claiming to be a film student. I thought, you know, I'd help him with his film project. So I just answered a few questions and ended up on MTV in a rather unsavory show.
What was even worse was the CSI episode in 2003.
Oh,
They actually had locals on the show as consultants who say that the show decided to ignore everything they said.
Unfortunately, that was the image that was now given. This is what the world was seeing. A boss would see a clip somewhere on the news. Oh, you're one of those weird, freaky people I heard about. Some folk lost jobs, lost relationships.
I had people at Disney telling me that I had to leave in order to focus on my career, or you know, or else I wouldn't have a
Disney told
career.
you to leave to focus on your.
So I had to make a decision, and that decision was to leave the fandom to focus on a career.
You don't tell your family, you don't tell your work, you don't tell other people.
That definitely made for a insular environment, especially in the early 2000s.
And you need to sell your magazine or something. You want people to pick that thing up and read it. Well, you can talk to this person for 45 minutes about, oh, I made this fursuit and it took me this long and here's how I stitched it and this is... You can talk to this guy over here. Well, yeah, I'm a writer. I write stories and then my stories are all about furries and I put furries in the stories and I write. Or you get the guy who says, yeah, I like to have sex in my fursuit. That's what's going to sell. Damned if I'm going to stand around and let you put this TV show on that's going to make them embarrassed to be a part of this remarkable thing that we have created together. So I fought back.
Here is the problem we face. The media wants to do stories on furry fandom. Very, very often, they are going to be asking questions. Does that sort of thing go on at your convention? Look, I run the thing. If that sort of thing was going on at my convention, number one, I would like to think I know about
Oh,
it.
God.
Number two, why am I not invited? Yeah, you're all laughing. Ha ha, it's a joke, it's a joke. You notice I didn't say no. Never lie. But you can minimize it.
Anthrocon is not just for people in costume. It's for artists, cartoonists, performers, and we have writers, artists, puppeteers, and they'll be wandering about. If you see a large raccoon on the streets of Pittsburgh, don't be alarmed, it's just us. If they're going to have their misconceptions, the only thing we can do is just stand back and say, here we are.
Kage always is out there talking about the money we bring to the city and the goodwill we bring to the city.
He's a
knew
very
how to make
honest
furry
guy. I
appealing
love
to the
him,
public
seriously.
at large. And it is just so gratifying and rewarding to come to a place where you're welcome and embraced.
Yes, welcome to opening ceremonies of what looks to continue to be the largest anthropomorphics convention in the world.
Everybody's scared of saying it. It's fine. Sex is fine. And
Yeah!
sometimes we have it. It's not what defines the community, but it's part of the community. And for a lot of people, this community helped them discover what that means. How could you?
That happened to me
try
when I was a
say
brony.
It doesn't exist. That's insane.
And partially
I've
this
been
one
accused
fandom
of
as well.
whitewashing the fandom. I've been accused of, he's trying to control the media.
Oh
well,
my
you know
God.
what? You try it someday.
Yeah.
You know, let's get you in front of a camera and have them say, okay, so what's it like to have sex in a fursuit? Let's have you answer that question.
Oh, God.
Especially if you know that your grandmom's watching, or your mom, or your dad, or your future spouse.
Oh.
When furry fandom first began, it was organized by some fellows who, as enthusiastic as they were, really did not pay much mind to the sort of public image they were giving to this burgeoning fandom. Let's face it, I was there. Kinda looked like Pride Fest on an acid trip. I have worked very, very, very hard to foster good relationships with the local media and with the city of Pittsburgh. I want to keep it that way.
I've heard at least one opinion
Phil
up there
Con,
that
Philadelphia,
the physical
Pennsylvania.
aspect seems more prevalent, the sexual aspect. Why do you think? Where do you think it originated from? If you're going to put all your effort into one little piece, you want to make sure it sells. And the one that's sure to sell is that hot, steamy one.
And on the internet, it's horrible because, like, you cannot find any, like, good, normal furry art.
You go into the conference art show, and even in the general audience section, there's stuff that I wouldn't show a child, or my mother, or any of my friends outside
true.
furry fandom.
Even if it was safe, it's still like,
Sex sells everywhere. You look in any subculture, mainstream, subculture, goth, furry, anywhere.
Not to the extreme extent that it is portrayed and pushed and produced in furry fandom.
Yeah.
I am not asking people to behave differently than general society. I'm asking them to behave like people in general.
Okay, I think that's... Wait, let's have one thing to say. Let's have one.
We started getting problems with people trying to sabotage the convention pretty early on. You had to chalk this up to the fact that people didn't like Rodney and I, especially because we were a couple.
Wow.
They naturally assumed our main interest was have a gathering of like-minded people for sex. And a lot of these rumors were strung on for years.
No.
And we're having some trouble here at the convention too, because some of the people involved in the hotel believe that if it is a cartoon character, it was obviously it was designed to attract children, and therefore we're trying to do something reverse by attracting children.
Oh no!
And then a Bay Area furry convention was going to happen in January, the same time ours had happened for nearly 10 years. So we decided to change our dates. A lot of the fans from San Diego said, how about the Town and Country? We've been having science fiction conventions there for years. So I went and talked to the hotel, and I cut a deal with them. But when we tried to have our planning meetings in San Diego, the staff from up here would not come. They wouldn't drive it. And more of the responsibility fell on me and Rodney. And it was taking all my time. As a nail in the coffin, we had the worst April weather they've ever had in San Diego in 20 years.
Well, isn't that right for indoor attractions?
In San Diego.
Oh, never mind. Yeah,
Attendance
never
was
mind.
down
It would
by at
prevent
least
travel.
200 people.
Wow.
When I had the staff meeting at the end of the convention, I said, okay, I have worked with Rodney, ran this convention from 0 to 10. I am stepping down. People looked around for someone to replace me, and the gentleman who had been doing our daily newsletter stood up and said, I will take it over. Everyone said, great. I guess it was in 2003, he basically stood up at the closing ceremonies and said, I am officially closing conference forever. He had told us that he'd trademarked the name and that nobody else could ever have a convention called Conference.
I nearly choked myself out. Oh my god.
I feel strange saying this, but I expected it to get bigger. I just had this dream in my head of everything kind of coming together. But we're going into an era where people are more about breaking apart communities rather than coming together into big communities.
Damn.
And unfortunately, there's furry too.
Conventions were kind of viewed by their host hotels and their host cities as, what is this stuff? Some folk got together, they called themselves the Burned Furs, having been burned by this image that was being projected.
The Burned Furs were out to clean up the fandom, get rid of all of that sex-related stuff.
Now, I kind of agreed in principle with that concept. We can have fun, but can we do it over there where people aren't looking?
And I thought, hey, this seems like a good idea. Clean up fandom, why not? But it was that to the extreme.
I have seen this fandom degenerate from a very nice thing into a endless parade of human debris. Thank you very much, Clay.
This is limbo.
The Burned Furs felt that there were people in fur fandom that they did not like who should be somehow pushed out of the fandom.
Wow.
Particularly people who...
This is almost similar to like how recent times in the brony fandom, like you had the right-wing bronies, you know, like literally push people out because of their politics, you know, choices and stuff. And it's crazy. It's fucked up. Oh my god.
What if
what can I say?
underage
No fandom
person
is
sees
perfect.
that?
And in the end, we tried to, you know, stay together.
So this
forever.
group wanted to do
As
something
long as
about it, and
possible.
they had a manifesto of cleaning up the fandom.
No one was complaining when all of the art was female pinups. Heterosexual couples. It was okay.
And ultimately, the pushback against porn and adult content in furry is an attempt to push LGBT furs out of furry.
Somehow, Mark and I were at fault for the appearance of LGBT people in among furry fandom, which, if we wanted to, we wouldn't have known how. Furry fandom has attracted every stripe of the political spectrum. Although we could all sit around and discuss Donald Duck, if we got into talking about whether or not there should be gay marriage allowed, there would be bottles being thrown.
It's interesting
Is
how
that
this
Dusty?
entire thing
That
got
was Dusty, I think. Oh my gosh.
essentially got completely sidetracked.
Dusty in a fedora. Oh my god. Well, wait, he's wearing fedora. What the fuck? I can't even think straight. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god.
The current alt-right problem in furry fandom is the current alt-right problem in the United States, which is the current alt-right problem in Western civilization.
You are seeing more politics than you've ever seen before get in. I think once you got the Trump administration in, you saw a lot of furries become much more politically active. And that's made it more difficult for convention organizers to know what they should and shouldn't respond to.
We have a pocket of individuals here intertwining with the larger online community of the alt-right. Entangled with people that represent a hate message towards marginalized individuals.
The different conventions have had politics take them down.
For the furry community, that's pretty bad, because a lot of us are LGBTIA. I don't think that I would have been the person that I am today if I didn't have furry cons. No doubt.
Okay. Thank you for this year. Thank you for everything up to this year, and we'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you next year. And good evening.
Well, early on, I had encountered people who said, I came to the convention and I walked into the lobby and I felt, I'm home. I'm finally home. They found their family. They found their people. They found their culture. And that aspect has not changed.
Once I'm committed to something, I don't want to let it go. I can't let it go until it dies. We've all grown as a community together, but we want to make sure that what we're doing now is what the community wants now. And I know if we lose these conventions, we'll lose a lot of our community.
We have younger people coming into the fandom, and they see how open everybody is, and they deserve that. They deserve the opportunities that we have or that we didn't have when we were younger.
We can create environments where people are safe, where we don't overreact, where we're not dramatic, and just try to be in the best interest of our attendees overall and let them have the environment they can to be who they want to be.
A lot of the negativity comes from these big voices online, and when you take it into perspective, there's 1,000 other people that are having a good time. I couldn't let it go. I would feel so guilty. I think this year went really well. 2,700 attendees. We raised $15,000 for charity.
For Denver, we have Freedom Service Dog, where last year we raised $15,000 so they can have an awning for the dogs when they go outside so it didn't burn their paw pads when they're going from the indoor training facilities to the outdoor kennels.
We raise as much money as we can for the charity we choose. We try to pick them locally, and they're usually animal related.
I really feel like I owe a lot to the community just because it's taught me so much. It's made me become much more of an open and understanding person.
And we are, I think, outgrowing those stereotypes. I think we're becoming appreciated for ourselves.
Artists are really like the backbone of so much of what happens because that's how we're representing these characters at all.
I remember at the first few conventions, no, nobody's ever going to make a living off of doing this. You're crazy to think that. And here we are today.
Yeah,
There's
right.
probably hundreds of artists making some or all of their living off of this.
Yep. And I love it.
I think the fandom's made my life better.
I probably wouldn't even have a quarter of the life that I do now.
I'd have a different career. I don't know if I'd be happy.
I'd be just a nobody in a crowd.
I would never have met my husband. I would never have met my best friends.
Every single one of my closest friends is a furry.
Just thinking about not having that experience is hard.
Not having that, I don't know what I'd do.
I don't really want to think about because it seems like it would be a very, very dark road to go down.
We have our typical stories we tell about the fandom.
What is furry fandom? Oh, it's a bunch of guys who like sitting around drawing.
And a lot of the films were really popular.
That was the first convention.
That's a Trinity Hop's at. Oh my god.
Our fandom is based on a concept, and that concept isn't going away.
I go around to conventions, and I look at the fursuit parade, I look at the dances, I look at the dealers' rooms and how big they've gotten, and I'll admit it. I sometimes will walk around kind of and going, yeah, I was involved with starting this. Yeah.
You know, we're still in it.
This is
and
great.
we're probably not going to get out of it. I don't intend to ever get out of it. I think the fandom is something I'm the most proud of in my life.
When people are having fun at a convention, at a meetup, online, or just two people who never would have met one another who discover a mutual love of furry and they get married. Yeah, that's what we're about.
Oh my god. To this day, Bubble leads 5 different furry conventions. Awesome, girl. Yes.
There were two
oh god, Sam, come on!
Till the flood waters start to rise. Maybe
you had the dab, you ruined it. It's true. Anthracon's still one of the longest running furry conventions. Yes.
Though the truth talks and money lies, and one man can override a million and claim their stake.
They continue to this day.
Keep on rolling, keep on holding, keep on hoping against hope that if we repeat the same technique, someday we'll find a way to override.
I'm gonna stay in the credits, y'all. Ash.
Just breathe. Feel the wind as it's whipping by. All the energy kinetic as you're rolling down this hill. Such speed. Couple words that are chosen why.
ADL, thank you for the animation.
Up and swallowed by a system and I'm still
Trash Panda, thank you for the thumbnail. It looks
never
fucking
figured I'd be
amazing.
fired, straight up wired, bit too gay for parents' taste. I never thought that while I taught I'd be displaced from my last summer of innocence. Just think, if the dollar drops will come for you, Do you know what you are gonna do when normal can't compete? The brink, though you stood here for 2 generations, you assume you'll be spared if you left us now.
Look at all those supporters, holy crap. Ben really worked his butts off on this, and the reception they received was totally well deserved. And I gotta give them a special congratulations for winning an award in one of the film festivals that this documentary was featured in. Bravo. Everybody deserves a huge round of applause for that. Seriously. Like, I tip my hat to everyone. Yes, and that is a wrap, everyone, for the furry documentary, The Fandom. Oh my gosh, that was certainly a joyful ride we just witnessed. Seriously, now, I'm not gonna lie, there were so many things that I started to really learn about the furry fandom, because I did know about the things, how it started, you know, back in the 80s and 70s and stuff, and, you know, it started pretty much like out in the sci-fi and all that, but then it started to like really grow and generate, and then ever since the internet born, that's when it really started to grow, and the creativity is just, oh my god, it's just a spectacle, from like artwork to animation to dancing to music. Like, the furry fandom is like a spectrum of creativity, and I wonder why that sounds so familiar. Oh yeah, the bronies also have that same type of spectrum too. But the thing that I really enjoyed and admired and really started to look into was its mentioning to its LGBTQ representation, which I'm not gonna lie, the brony fandom also exemplifies that and also is known to being like an accepting group and community, but this one really embraces that, and I really respect the hell out of it. I truly do. And just so many other things, like knowing about its creators and its founders to like conventions and hearing about their stories, like it was just so interesting. And also the thing that I really gotta give mad props to was its response and its mentioning to the sexual side of the fandom, which of course, as you all know, like it's kind of hard to explain it now after watching it, because I don't want to try to like say the wrong things, but the way how they put it in their words was just absolutely great and really brings about like, okay, I mean, sex is part of human life, so whatever, but at the same time, we should take into consideration about the standards to people and, you know, human beings and stuff. So I gotta give kudos to how that theme was presented in the documentary. That was actually very good. And as for other things, well, oh my gosh, there was actually a few people and a few faces that I started to recognize, like of course Dusty Cat, I guess, like back in those old videotapes and as well as those photos and stuff. And also I think I just saw Forest Rain as she was like getting herself set up for her performance for Denver in one of the Denver 2019 clips. I think that was pretty much her. But other than that, I love this documentary and I absolutely love the furry fandom, and I'm proud to be a furry. So with that, hope you guys enjoyed my reaction to the furry documentary, The Fandom by Ash Coyote. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, check out the rest of my reactions and reviews, click on the bell, all as well. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at FritzRolle732, and I give you a bow for a jolly good show. And that is a wrap, everyone. See ya!